if you have money, because you will be able to move through the crisis with a little bit more ease. Does her statement speak to you, or how does her statement speak to you? And is there any truth behind it? What do y'all think?
Okay, I'll jump out there. I think that her statement it shows an attitude. It's a testimony to the problem. It's a testimony to the climate problem. It shows that we have a culture based on greed and that we do not have life at the center of our needs. A person going through college ought to be looking at how can they use their God-given gifts to restore, to redeem the earth, to make this a more abundant place for everyone to live. And that doesn't seem to be a value that is in this person's statement. I think that it's unfortunate that wealthy people can temporarily avoid some of the discomfort, but trust me, as we continue to destroy more and more of the earth, the wealthy will not escape. When I did my Katrina response work, I was on the ground, I did a radio broadcast, and the wealthy, the powerful, everyone was in a mess. Okay, it didn't matter how much money you had if everyone was underwater. If everyone is on the rooftops, it doesn't matter. And I don't think that we need to have a culture that is so focused on wealth that we're willing to destroy our life support system.
Okay.
I I agree. I couldn't agree more with Reverend Dele. I don't think it is an either-or situation where you can have wealth and insulate yourself from climate problems. And if you don't have wealth, you are going to suffer. We've seen in California how very wealthy people lost their lives, because of the wildfires. And it's been going on for several years. So all of us need to get involved in the climate action, especially the young people should not try to hide from climate change, and they should tackle it upfront by pushing their local representatives for climate action, for policies that will include everyone in a green economy. So yes, it is. While it is true that if you have wealth, you can temporarily protect yourself, you can have better insurance, you can recover from loss quickly, you can live in part of the country where climate change is less of an issue. But in the long run, each and every one of us will be affected by climate. And so we need to fix the problem.
I can definitely agree with that. I do think, though, I definitely agree with your statement, is that if you're wealthier, you're living in an area that's less prone to the climate crisis, at least it's less prone to the effects. If you don't have as much money, you're kind of just left with an area that's more prone to the effects. And you may also not have enough money to get technology to adapt. I do agree that it affects all of us, humankind in general, though you just feel the effects less if you're wealthier.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people would also. I think the statement speaks to a lot of people who are being disproportionately affected by the climate crisis. We have communities where they are predominantly persons of color, and a large African American contingency living in communities where there is a lot of what we call environmental injustice or environmental racism is occurring. And most of these communities are communities where they are a percent below the poverty level. The household or the household per capita is less than $20,000 a year. And so in these communities, we find that the community infrastructure is often not as it should be. There's not a lot of fair and equal housing. There are things that are affecting the environment in these communities because of the lack of resources that are going into maintaining the community. And so these communities that I'm speaking of, these are communities where they are poor, they are below poverty level, they are experiencing a high degree of climate crisis. And so I'm just looking at it from that perspective, where that young lady wrote that statement. She's like, okay, well, I want to make sure I have some money so that I can go live in a cleaner community, where I can go live where the infrastructure is a lot stronger. And I don't have to live in a community where the persons that are in that community are being disproportionately affected by environmental racism. So that is pretty much how what that statement speaks to me about. And it is true. I do agree that there are, environmental racism is not just in communities of color, but it's all over. But it's disproportionately affecting those communities where people of color are.
I'd like to add to that, Dr. White, that the NAACP did a study entitled "Cold Blooded" several years ago, where they looked at communities of color and their proximity to toxic waste sites. And what they found is that African Americans of any income level were more likely to be located next to toxic sites. So it didn't really matter. African Americans were not able to use wealth to escape environmental degradation. And so I think, it's a both and situation. Yes, primarily the poor suffer disproportionately, and people of color of any wealth could not escape even right now.
Especially right now during the pandemic. But in regular time, right. But this statement is definitely speaking to what's going on right now. You're absolutely right, Reverend. And then in a previous show on we discussed some of the components. I can't stop talking about the Green New Deal. But in a previous show concerning climate change, we discussed the components of the Green New Deal, one of which actually will actually be a job creator rather than a job destroyer. What are some? Does anybody have any information on various jobs that are available to those who want to combat this change? And what are some of the resources that will be available as this Green New Deal goes into effect?
Well, I think that we're hoping that the USDA will, again, step up their food security measures and become more fair in the way that they distribute support to farmers, so that farmers of color can have the support that other farmers have had for generations. And I think we're looking at the evolution of new industries. Landscaping is actually a very easy entry profession that all of our communities would benefit from, because if we were to restore our neighborhoods back to their original ecosystems, we would immediately see the air being purified, and we would immediately see health disparities turned around because that your environment wasn't stored. I'm also part of an initiative here in upstate New York that's looking at hempcrete as a substitute for concrete and as a substitute building material. And what that will do, actually, even if we were to step up the manufacturing of hempcrete, we would see a reduction in sea level rise, because one of the reasons we are seeing the sea level rise is that we're excavating sand, millions of tons